In this video, I wanted to cover the instructions for the critical analysis essay so that you know exactly what's expected of you and you can, do your best work right up front as opposed to trial and error before you get to your final draft. So if you have any questions, never hesitate to ask, but hopefully I can go over the main elements of what this assignment is looking for, how to write it, and I will also go and take a look at the example that BYU Idaho provides for you so that I can show you what this assignment looks like when it's completed. So the point of this essay is to put down in writing your literary interpretation of a piece of literature using a literary theory. Of course, that's the whole point of this course, really. So this essay is the demonstration of your work in that area. So I just want to go over some of the critical elements of this essay. So the word limit is 600 to 750 words. If your essay is too short, your grade will be severely affected. So make sure that your paper is at least 600 words. And really, you're not supposed to go over 750 words, but I'm not going to make a big deal about that. So try to keep it in this range, but at the bare minimum, make it 600 or you will lose quite a few points for that. Also, be aware that when your word count consists of your title in your paper, that is it. So if we go over here to the sample essay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at your title and I'm going to go through the body of your essay. So this essay is just under 700 words long, so it's perfect. Okay, we don't count the works cited page, the page numbers, or your heading. So it is just the body of your essay. So please keep that in mind. So that's the length requirement. Also, keep in mind that you are writing to an academic audience. I am not your audience, but someone who is interested in literary interpretation and the text that you're working with is your audience. So you need elevated diction. Avoid things like using you. Stay in the third person. Try not to even narrate. That is the highest level of academic writing, in my opinion. Don't use contractions. Spell out those words. So instead of saying can't, write cannot. And again, just be very aware of the word choices you're using, how you're phrasing things. You're not going to write your essay as if it were a conversation with a friend. This is an academic essay. It is a formal essay, so please write it accordingly. Let's see here. I do also like that they mention to write it as if it was something you'd find in an academic journal. And really, you're going to be using sources from an academic journal. So if you wonder, well, what does that look like? Look at your sources and write how they write. So be very professional. You don't have to be stuffy and overly formal, but you definitely want to err more toward formality as opposed to informality. Make sure you use MLA, and always make sure that you have a works cited page including the text that you're working with as well as your sources. So that is an absolute requirement to the essay. Otherwise, you get into issues with plagiarism. All right, so you're going to be writing 3 of these essays throughout the semester. Each one is going to follow these same guidelines. It will be consistent, so that's good. And it shows the different texts that you can work with for your essay. So for the first one, you've got these short stories. The second essay, these short stories, and then these short stories for number 3. So again, this is going to be a consistent assignment. So I'm not just addressing your first essay. This really applies to all 3. All right, let's see here. A very helpful hint for you is to focus your paper on only one of these texts. So you might think, oh, well, I'd really love to compare and contrast 2 of them. I really wouldn't recommend it. It will really help focus your paper if you stick to just one. Because let's go back to the essay. You can see really how short it is. It's just over 2 pages long. So maybe 2 and a third pages long. That's not a whole lot of space to write something. So if you work with more than one text, you're going to find that your paper is going to be getting way too long. So focus on only one text at a time and your interpretation of it, obviously. Try to select an idea that allows you to enter the conversation about that piece of literature that you're working with. You can look at your sources and say, well, what does this person say? And what does this person say? Now, what do I want to say? So that's kind of the point of those literary journals. Academic folks want to have their say about a given text, and so they come up with an idea, and then they enter that conversation through that idea. Let's see. Make sure you go back and read all this information. I am just highlighting specific things that I want to point out. Make sure you stay focused on the theory that you're asked to write about for each assignment. That will differ between the 3 essays. Okay, make sure you mention, use the literary terms that you're going to learn in the course. And one suggestion, again, is to anchor your analysis in these literary elements. So focus on these. Pick one story and pick a couple elements of literature that you want to bring out in them. That's going to automatically focus your paper. It's going to keep the page limit, acceptable. And it's really going to focus your ideas and where you're going to work with the essay, where you're going to work with the story and what you're going to do with it. Otherwise, you might just have so much information that you get overwhelmed and your paper just kind of crumbles because it's so unfocused. So if you can just focus on one text and only a couple elements of that text at a time, you should be golden. That's a natural way to keep yourself focused. Let's see here. Develop an issue question. You do that with your T-analysis papers. You are formulating a question that you're trying to answer, and from that, you are coming up with a statement based on that. Make sure you use evidence well. Textual evidence refers to materials that you are taking out of the literary text itself. So that is your primary text. So you want to use direct quotes and summaries from the story that you're analyzing. And make sure your quotes from the story are short. Your paper is short, so I do not want long quotations in your paper, please. So make sure you read through those tips. You want to use scholarly evidence. That is secondary sources, and you need 2 in each of your papers. So make sure that they are of good quality. Make sure that they're meaningful. Use the journals online in order to do that research. So you've got evidence from your primary text, which is a short story, and you've got secondary sources, which is your scholarly evidence. And you've got to use both of them together in order to synthesize the information and make your point. Okay? Then you have to do good work in integrating your evidence. That's how you use quotes or summaries and how you integrate them into your own writing so that it's seamless. You don't want to be choppy and have things grammatically mismatched. You want all of the evidence that you use in your paper to flow into your own writing, and that can take some practice. But they've got some great tips. Probably the best tip is to introduce each source and then to introduce each quotation or summary in some way. And that's how you start to draw them in. We'll look at examples in the example essay. Also, be sure to explain the significance. Why are you bringing this up? Don't introduce a quote and then give a quote and then not explain it. You have to tell your reader why that quote is important and how it develops your argument about the text. Make sure you really read as many articles as you can on your text, even if you don't use them in your paper. It just gives you a broader insight and a broader perspective about that story. These are the journals that you can use from BYU Idaho's library. Let's see here, don't use internet sources. I've previously mentioned that Wikipedia is great for a generalized idea of information. However, it does not belong in an essay. Do not use web sources in your paper, please. And they give a sample organization. I don't care if you stick to this, but really, there's no reason you shouldn't. You have to have a title with your paper. You need to introduce your paper in some way. Then you've got the body where you make your various points and support it with your evidence. Then you conclude. So that's really just kind of kind of a no-brainer organization, but how you do that and how many paragraphs you have is ultimately up to you. Make sure you have a thesis statement in your introduction so that your reader knows exactly what you're arguing and where you're headed. Don't use rhetorical questions, please. That's part of academic writing, and it's also a weaker form of a thesis statement. So don't use rhetorical questions anywhere in your essay, please. Make sure you give appropriate background, only what's relevant for your paper. You don't have to give a ton of biographical or contextual background information about the author of the story. Just give the pertinent information you need for your analysis. Remember, your paper is quite short. You don't want information that is going to misdirect your reader and make your paper unfocused. Also, make sure you use proper documentation within your text, so use your in-text citations appropriately for all summaries and direct quotes, and make sure you have a works cited page. Yes, your final draft should always look much better than your rough draft or your initial draft. Make sure you submit your essay on time, otherwise it's 0 because I don't accept late work. Make sure it's a Word document, so it needs to be a .doc or a .docx, whatever that is. Or however you say it, I know what it is. So it needs to be one of those. I actually don't care if you do a PDF file. I would prefer a Word document, but sometimes when students upload Word documents, the document changes. So if you always start with a Word document, but I can work with you and allow you to do a PDF if it's necessary. But for the most part, I want Word documents. Please, please, please do not submit it in the comments. When you go to submit your final draft, you upload it as an attachment as a Word document. Okay, so that's pretty much all the main information. Make sure you go back through this sheet, the instructions for the essay, read it multiple times, highlight all the important stuff, and make sure that your essay, meets those requirements. Now let's turn to the sample essay really quickly. The MLA looks good for the most part. The page number is too small, so make sure you fix that. But otherwise, on the outset, the works cited page looks great. Look at how they are citing their sources and use this as an example to cite your own. There's nothing wrong with that. I would like to see creative titles, so please, take the time to do that. Here is the author's thesis statement. So look at how they introduce the story and what they're going to talk about. Look at how they integrate their sources. For example, this is a summary, but they still have a citation for their source. So make sure you're doing when it's appropriate. I don't think that this essay uses transitions very well, so make sure that you use transitions before, at the beginning of each paragraph as you move from one to the next. You look at how they use information from the story itself as well as secondary information to develop their thoughts, and then look at the conclusion. I think the conclusion could be developed a bit, but overall this is a good example. So make sure you take some time to look at it. Let me know if you have any questions, and always let me know if you'd like me to look at a draft of your paper too, because I'm more than willing to do that. So good luck on your first essay, and just keep me posted on how you're doing.